Okay, so I just want to go through conversions between degrees and radians. So radians is just a different unit of measuring turning around a circle. So it's measuring turning. So prior to this, we've kind of measured in degrees. But degrees is quite limiting. If you can turn something to radians, then it gives you like a measurement unit, like a length. And that's really useful for real life applications when you're like doing something where it turns. So basically, if you start off and you look at a unit circle, so a unit circle just means that the radius is equal to 1. Then the perimeter of that circle is 2 pi r, so it's 2 pi times 1, so it's just 2 pi. And if you go around 360 degrees, that's how many degrees around the circle. And if you go around here, that length is 2 pi r. So it's 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi. So that means that 1 degree will be equal to, if you divide by 360, 2 pi on 180. So 1 degree is actually equal to that's 2 pi on 360, pi on 180. And also if you divide by 2 on both sides, 180 degrees is equal to pi radians. So we have like 180 degrees is equal to pi radians, and that's what we use to convert things between radians. So 1 degree, if you divided that by 180, then 1 degree would be pi on 180. So what that means is if you have 40 degrees, for example, 40 degrees in radians would be 40 times pi on 180. So you just times by pi on 180, which 40 on 180 will simplify to 2 on 9. So it's 2 pi radians. So what that actually means, if you have an angle of 40 degrees here, then that means that at the on the unit circle here, that means that length there will be equal to 2 pi on 9. And if you put that in your calculator, you get like a decimal place, and it's a length. So if you turn 40 degrees, then you turn 2 pi on 9 radians at the edge of the circle. So it's that there. So if you have 60 degrees is 60 pi on 180, which is pi over 3. So that means if you turn 60 degrees at the centre, then on the circumference you would have turned pi on 3 radians. And just to give you an idea, like pi is 3.14, and if you divide by 3, that will give you approximately like the length that you have turned that matches that angle. So kind of important angles, like you can find any angle. So like say you have 32 degrees and you want to change that to radians, you just put it at times pi on 180. So any angle can be quickly converted to radians by timesing by that. And you just need to put 32 on 180 to get your simplified fraction. So 32 on 180, which is equal to 8 on 45. So 8 pi on 45 radians. That's exactly, if you wanted it to a decimal place, then you just times whatever that answer is, the 8 on times pi. So like the 8 on 45, you just times pi. Now that'll be 0.56 radians. So that's like the length on that circle if you turn 32 degrees. So we have some angles that like are exact angles, and they're called our exact angles because we actually express them in terms of surds. Okay, so that's the ones we look at are 60, 30 and 45. So it's important to be able to get 60 degrees in terms of radians, so that would be pi on 3. A way to remember is 3 times 60 is 180. And, if you did 60 on 180, that the fraction of 180 that is 1/3. So that's why that's pi on 3. 30 degrees times pi on 180. 30 on 180 is pi on 6. So that's pi on 6 in exact form. And 45 times pi on 180 is pi on 4. So just some things here. So we're going degrees, and we'll do radians. These are kind of the ones you might want to know pretty quick. So, 0, 0. Then if we did 60, that would be pi on 3. 30, that's pi on 6. 45, that's pi on 4. Then you go 90. 90 is half of 180, so it's pi on 2. 90 on 180 times pi, will give you a half of pi. 180 is pi. 270, that will be 3.5. So if you did 270 on 180 pi, 270 is 3 on 2 pi. So it's like 1.5. And 360 is 2 lots of 180, so it's 2 pi. So these ones, it's good to just get really very familiar with them. And any other angle you can just convert. So if you want to go from degrees to radians, then you times by pi on 180. So you just put that next to it. And I kind of think if you want it to be radians, you put the radians on top. If I've given radians and you want to go back to degrees and minutes, so 180 degrees equals pi radians. So if you get 1 radian, you would have to divide 180 by pi. So if you want to go from radians and you want to go to degrees, you basically just got to times by 180 on pi, or if it's in terms of pi, you just replace the pi with 180. So the two different examples here, so you have 2.4 radians, then you go 2.4 times 180 on pi. So if you do 2.4 times 180 over pi, you end up with 137.5098. And if you press the degree minute button, you end up with 137 degrees 31 minutes. But if you're given something like 2 pi on 3, it's just 2 on 3 times 180. So I just kind of think of, I'm on a third, like third of 180, which is 60. 2 times 60 is 120 degrees. So, if you're given 3 pi on 4, that would be 3 on 4 times 180. 180 goes into 445. 3 45s is 135. And that's how you would get it in degrees. Okay. I just want to also then explain, like if you're going around this way, that is a positive angle. And if you're going around this way, that is a negative angle. So like if you have minus pi on 3, that would be minus 180 on 3, which is minus 60 degrees. So what that actually means is going 60 degrees in that direction. So that's the positive direction, and that there is the negative direction of turning.